I'm Christian Schiller. Welcome to my podcast, an enthusiastic ramble through whatever has taken my interest the past week or so. Expect technology, games, history, travel, geekery, and as always, much, much more. Welcome to another Chinchilla Squeaks with me, Christian Schiller. This is an interview show. I say that because I am soon going to bring back my news episodes as well. My news and links roundup episodes, but I'm going to keep those separate from the interviews. Kind of 1 week news and links, 1 week interview, etc., etc. So basically, news every 2 weeks, interview every 2 weeks. So hopefully there will be a news and links show next week, though I will be on the road. So we'll see when that actually starts, but that's going to be the rough idea moving forward. This episode, I have an interview with Corey Harrison of Flip.ai, doing generative AI in different situations, and one of a couple of interviews I have coming up over the next few months using generative AI in sort of DevOps and DevOps adjacent spaces, which is interesting, actually. It's this element of having like a specialized AI, a specialized LLM to handle particular tasks better than generalized ones. And with Flip.ai, they are using this particularly for observability, for handling all of that system data that comes from large clusters, Kubernetes, databases, etc., and helping you dig through that to get meaningful results. So it's an interesting conversation, an interesting topic, an interesting time of change in this kind of space. And I hope to have, well, no, I don't hope to have, I know I have, because I've recorded them, some more interviews with other companies doing some similar things. So enjoy that. But first, just a few words from sponsors. Today I'm joined by Corey Harrison of Flip.ai. Firstly, I just wanted to double check because the company is currently going under the name of Flip.ai, but then when I look at certain things, it says Flip has a history. So was there a Flip before there was a Flip.ai, or has there always been a Flip.ai?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we started off as Flip, and we started with Flip, but our customers kept calling us Flip.ai or Flip.ai. So like most things here, we decided to go where the customers are and decided to call ourselves Flip.ai.
Fair enough. And increasingly so, it's not just a domain extension, is it?
That's right.
So we should probably jump into what Flip.ai is, because you're combining a lot of kind of interesting things that I've seen overlapping a little bit at times, but not quite in the way you're doing it. So what is Flip.ai doing?
Yeah, so our customers call us the holy grail of observability. It's almost like this, when we started selling, it's this promise that AI was supposed to deliver to the enterprise, basically having AI that's so smart that it can help troubleshoot incidents, it can help resolve things automatically, it can help you run your infrastructure one day, right? Mm-hmm. And for a large part, it had been a myth until we started building our models. So we're not an observability company that's implementing AI. Mm-hmm. We're an AI company that's focused on observability. And that means that generative AI is at the core of everything we do here. So we're what we call an observability intelligence platform. What we've done is, and everything we've done is built around our model, which can correlate observability data, so logs, metrics, traces, et cetera, across multiple data sources, any platform, any data modality, and generate predictive and incident root cause analyses in seconds. That's what we do.
I'd like to dig into a couple of things here, because what you said and some of what your website says sounds almost a bit too magical. So, and I've come from a background a little bit of working in observability in the past. So yeah. I just wanted to dig into the claim on, you mentioned logs, metrics, traces, the kind of standard three pillars of observability, but they can come from a lot of different sources. And you can, I don't know if ingest is the right word because you're doing something different, but you are compatible, shall we say, with all of those from all providers. Surely there's got to be some you can't, but or anything that conforms to the standards, like open telemetry and open tracing and things like that. Is that maybe the caveat, or?
We do focus. We do work with OTel compatible items. I will say that our models first language is logs, right? So our co-founder Sunil, who used to run Amazon Comprehend, which I believe is one of the largest NLP services in the world when he was there, he likes to say systems talk to each other in APIs and they express their pain in logs, right? So what we've done is we've trained our model on logs as its first language. So that the reason I bring that up is because it candidly doesn't matter to our models where the logs, metrics, and trace data or event data is, right? It could be anywhere as long as our models can query the source, right? So, whether that's in a different observability tool, whether that's in an object data store, it could be anywhere, right? So I think for us, a lot of when we go into customers and we're selling, they're like, hey, here's my environment. It's unique. It's special. Can you work here? And our answer is usually yes, right? As long as we can get a read-only access to whatever tools we need to query or query access to whatever data source, as long as our models can get to the data, we can process it.
Okay. All right. So, and that read-only access, I'm guessing is it mostly through HTTP APIs or?
Yeah. Okay. Or you can use a user role in some cases, right? We try to, I think for us, right, so our backgrounds most of us are enterprise folks, right? So I worked in the Pentagon and White House. I have a medal from the Secretary of Defense. My other co-founder worked with me in the Pentagon. Sunil ran Amazon Comprehend. On average, our team has 10 to 15 years of enterprise experience, also putting AI into production, right? So there are certain tenets upon which we built our company and our intelligence. So first, if you're trying to sell anything into the enterprise or service environments where there's any sensitive information, the first thing you want to do is make sure that the data stays within the boundaries of the enterprise. So our models can go anywhere. Our models can go on-prem, multi-cloud, single cloud, hybrid. It doesn't matter, right? Our models can go anywhere, and they can operate in your environment, in an enterprise environment, while making sure all the data stays within those boundaries. Other things that matter to enterprises were just making sure that the models are pre-trained as much as we can get them, right? So our model comes pre-trained. We train on over 100 billion tokens of training data. That's DevOps data. We have our own training pipelines, our own training methods internally that are proprietary to Flip that we use to train our model so that they can ship to a customer with what's known in our field as zero-shot or few-shot capabilities. In other words, our models are pretty darn good out of the box in terms of solving issues. But that's not enough. You also have to have, every environment is different, right? So you also have the ability for your models to be able to train and learn locally. Our models can do that as well, right? So they once deployed into an enterprise environment, our model shows up, pre-trained as much as we can get it, but while it's in your environment, users can give our models feedback as to which steps of our root cause analysis are the most valuable or not, right? And the model takes that as signal to learn more about your environment. So that's why, what I'm trying to describe here is the tenets and how we approached building a model that's truly enterprise grade. And part of that is understanding that enterprises are going to have different tools, and we had to make sure that there was a way for us to be flexible enough to fit in any environment, right? And one of those ways was making sure that our models can just operate based on just simple read-only access or, API access, whatever you can get. Our team is incredibly scrappy and we'll figure it out. But the model is built such that it's as flexible as possible.
It's interesting because that's one of the other claims. You sort of jumped into what my next question was going to be. This no model training per client, I guess probably what you mean there. You're definitely training models. No data labeling. Our LLM technology is turnkey from day one. And I guess, fundamentally, whilst everyone will have very different use cases from the perspective of these new AI tools, which are very much used to processing a tremendous amount of data.
Yeah.
Looking at it from that perspective, as much as companies may not want to admit to this, most people's problems are similar. So there's possibly less that you needed to do than people may have thought, because, there's going to be a lot of commonality, I guess, especially when you're using predictable data formats and things. For a human, it's hard to process, but for an AI process, it's actually probably not so hard because it's very structured. It's, it's that kind of thing. Yeah. So you hit upon a kind of an interesting idea there. But when it comes to the ongoing training, Does each model then become somewhat, like variants of it become somewhat unique to each client? Or are there various toggles to allow that to kind of feed back to the greater good, as it were? Or is it optional? Or does everyone benefit from your retraining, or a little bit of between the two?
Yeah, so a couple things I'll call out there. I think you're right. When you're trying to debug incidents, if you're databases, right? Databases have been around for a long time, right? So if you're, even if one enterprise might have some sort of proprietary custom database from another enterprise, still a database, right? There's still certain types of approaches and tenants, right? And best practices, et cetera. And that's why our models are trained on, right? So that's what we mean by we pre-train them as much as we can. And they were used out of the box. We don't take, one thing I'll call out here is that we don't take one customer's data to train a model for another customer. Like that's something that we are very sensitive about, particularly given the environments that we're selling into. We are, as you kind of pointed out, we are in fact, each customer in fact does have their own model, right? And it does learn locally, et cetera. And we wouldn't try to mix things. I've worked in some highly sensitive environments, and we're selling.
It sounds like you have.
We try to have the highest security possible.
But I guess that base model that you began with was probably trained on, I don't know, open source. I don't even know if you can get open source log data, but
not really, right? Like we certainly, my colleagues have been in and around the space and training models for a long time. So certainly certain language aspects that we may have borrowed and learned from, but we've been effectively training our own model for the past, or about a year, a little bit over a year now, on our own data sets, right, with our own techniques.
Okay. The traditional observability platform is a lot of dashboards and kind of charts and tables. Are you putting yourself in addition to one of those sort of platforms, or do you also provide that kind of traditional observability data dashboard type interface?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the most important thing for us is to meet our customers where they are, right? I mean, we've run these teams, right? We've run large applications. We know how hard folks are working and doing their best, trying to provide the next level of customer experience, trying to connect the dots, trying to resolve incidents. So we tried to build our company and our platform and our LLM in a way such that we can meet you where you are. The reason I say that is because Flip can be consumed in several ways. So first, we do have our own web application that we've debugged. There are some dashboards that the model produces, and within our web app, it's cool. Like within our web app, when Flip debugs an incident, it just doesn't give you like an answer. This is not a black box at all. Everything is grounded in evidence. So the model gives you the exact path as to how it got to that answer. It'll give you all the queries. It gives you human readable summaries at every step, and it'll also give you supporting data. Right. And it gives you the entire path to how it got to that root cause analysis and why it got to the root causes and how in less than a minute. Right. So that we thought that was very important. So that's in our web app. Now, if customers want to use us there, that's great. But if customers want us to integrate our root cause analyses into a Slack thread, for example, or to append an updated Jira ticket, we're doing all those use cases now.
But that could be also, I think I'm still trying to understand how you will relate to that existing observability data. Are people replacing those platforms with you, or are you in addition to them? Are people running as Grafana or whatever it may be?
Yeah. Well, here's the reality, right? So we're selling into large enterprises. They tend to have multiple observability tools. Sometimes data is spread across teams. So if there's an incident or you want to, fine tune performance, you're querying between multiple systems. You're getting a PagerDuty alert. You're jumping from observability tool A to B to C. They all have their own query languages. Sometimes you might not even have access. Maybe the network logs are on a totally different team than yours, right? Like that's, and by the way, you're trying to troubleshoot this with, more alerts than you can count, right? And customers and revenue, and like it's a pretty high pressure situation. So what we try to do is, so we just connect. So our platform will connect to those existing tools, right? The same way a developer would. If I were a developer, I would get a ticket and we joke around, your average DevOps person has like 20 tabs up, right? Like they're going from, I won't say specific tools, but tool A to tool B to tool C to tool D.
I already
right?
mentioned one, so it's
fine. Right. And they're like, damn, I forgot how to write that query. Oh, I got to click through all these traces. And they're trying to correlate all this stuff really, really quickly. our models automate that entire
Okay.
process.
So I'm not going to replace those other platforms with you. You are another level of interface or abstraction or whatever you want to call it on top of those.
Correct.
Yeah?
Or,
Okay.
or in some cases, not at all, right? So what we're learning is there are certain enterprises that are moving off of traditional observability tools, right? And going to open source tools, or in some cases they're tiering their data so that, because it's expensive, right? So like they're tiering their data. So like the highest value data, maybe they put that in observability tool, but maybe there's a lower value data that they put into an object data store,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Like we're seeing the full gamut. And to us, our models, it doesn't matter to our models. Like we're not making another copy. We're not making another copy of your logs, and we're not going to charge you for that. Like we're not a big data play at all. We're just an intelligence layer. And we want to meet you wherever you are. It could be current observability tools. It could be cloud native logging tools. Like we can tap into CloudWatch logs, all that stuff. It could be really matter as long as we can get to it.
So just on that though, it'd be interesting to understand, like, what's the bare minimum? If someone is literally just like dumping log files, can you read that?
So I would say our value prop shines best when we get access to logs, metrics, and trees.
I would assume no one wants to use an LLM on their observability data if they aren't struggling with it. If someone is just dumping log files, they probably don't need you, I guess.
Yeah, agreed. But for those enterprises that are feeling the pain, right?
Yeah.
Those larger, these are complex applications.
Yeah.
These are very complicated environments. There's several tools in place. People are doing the best that they can. What we do is, we integrate and we meet you where you are, and we do a lot of the analysis that that would take you hours. We can do it in a minute. And even if our root cause analysis is not correct, the way that we give it to you, so we give you the exact steps that the model takes. We summarize everything in human readable summary along the way, and we also give you supporting data. So even if we're not 100% correct, we've done like 80% of the work for you, right? Like, so you're not starting off with just an alert.
We could come back to, I think, several aspects of this in a minute, but I'd like to go back a step before we go forward.
Yeah.
And that is to ask you, like, how did you get here? Why did you decide to create this angle on observability and not join the rat race of all the other observability platforms? Maybe I've just answered the question for you, but but why take this path?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. My journey is mostly very, very large enterprises. So I used to work in a national football league. We put on the first virtual draft in history. I was the chief of staff during COVID, right? And just being able to bring hope and some sense of normalcy to fans during that time mattered, right? Being in the Pentagon, I worked on a system that, all service members and their families used to travel, right? It's important. For me in my background, there's no shortage of large technology deployments and systems that have made the difference for, fans, customers, in some cases, citizens. We also know the hard work that teams are doing behind the scenes to try to fix those things. Sunil, our CTO, has debugged more applications than he can count, right? He's like lived with the battle scars and like had to query Splunk in the middle of the night, right? So we pivoted in this direction because mostly out of empathy for our former selves, right? Like we wanted to solve something that we ourselves dealt with. And also like the scientific breakthrough, right? I don't want to, the breakthrough in the generative AI that our team has been able to do in such a short amount of time is really remarkable, right? And I think for us, the question was, hey, our former selves need this thing, but can we train a model to do that? Like, can you really train a model to like understand logs, and can we make it on-prem and all this stuff? Right. We had a hypothesis around those things, but it took time for us to like push through. So once we started being able to get the breakthrough on the science side, we started meeting with customers, and then this is when people would say like, oh, you're working on the holy grail thing, get out of my office, right? Like just the virtual version of that, right? Like the Zoom version of get out of my office, right? Like, but we started spending time with customers and we realized like, no, this is still a pain. It's still a problem. It's still something that's largely hasn't been answered, right? By the current vendors and technology out there. And for us, like we took on the challenge, right? And we're taking it on every day.
And so you made the kind of, I guess, a launch announcement about a month ago, but how long was the company running before that? So you raised 6.5 million seed, which is quite high for seed, especially at this current moment in time. And you've built something relatively complex. So you must have been doing this behind the scenes for a little while, I guess.
Yeah. So I quit my job at the NFL almost 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Right? I left almost 2 years ago. Sunil left Amazon about almost 18 months ago, right? Maybe a little bit less than that. My math is maybe, just under 2 years ago. You know, me, Sunil, and our other co-founder, Deep, who's a former director of product at AWS, to start building out machine learning tools, right? We were building our own models. We didn't have the right, at least in our opinion, we didn't have a use case that was really exciting to us yet. We were kind of just like more fascinated with the technology. We basically had containerized NLP that was running on a laptop, which is like really cool, really groundbreaking. But when we took a step back and said, hey, let's actually like think about applying this to something that we all know and something that we've all felt and very deeply. And we were like, debugging incidents, right? Debugging incidents, applications going down, right? Observability, like that is it. Like that, those are the scars that we felt. and each of us have felt them in different ways, but like it's a collective scar that we felt. And for us, it was a great opportunity to try to break through something on the science, and then most importantly, answer the real customer pain that hasn't been answered yet.
You did start mentioning a little bit there, you know, there's this concern from a lot of people of generative AI to quote unquote hallucinate, shall we say. And you did mention that you already acknowledge that things will not always be completely accurate. So you quote the references, but I guess the question I'd kind of like to ask in this context is not really around the problems with hallucination, things like that. That's not really relevant in this conversation. It's more from a technical perspective. Where, in your case, where do you think an AI is hallucinating from? It's kind of because your data set is so sort of focused and specific to a lot of things. I'm kind of wondering, like, where do you think it could even get these external inputs from to make things up? I'm assuming probably on a fairly small level, but you've mentioned it, so I guess it happens. But how do you think it's even imagining this?
Yeah. So sorry, and I didn't use the term hallucination, right?
No, I did.
Right. Yeah. I said that. So our RCAs, maybe we got the wrong database or something. Maybe it's not 100% correct in terms of
it's
the
not
root cause.
that the data's incorrect. It's just maybe the source is mentioned incorrectly.
Yeah, or maybe the model just got the wrong answer, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, right? But maybe it pulled all the data, got the right path, but it said, hey, like this particular, this URI is failing. Yeah. It's not true. It's actually another URI, right? Like, and that's why we wanted to give grounded evidence along the way so that the users can follow and also give the supporting data, right? To give folks the opportunity.
It could also be things like correlations, I suppose. Maybe imagining a correlation that isn't there, which is probably relatively easy to do. You see some patterns, you think, well, maybe they're connected, but maybe they're not. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and look, I think for any of this stuff, I think any AI solution that says that they're 100% correct is, I wouldn't buy it, right? I think, right, because like if we ground ourselves in what we're trying to do, like have empathy for the developer that's trying to solve this, right? Like, yes, we're going to try our best to get this absolutely 100% correct, but if we're not, regardless of whether we are or not, we want to give you the path to how we got there, right? Like we want to give you every single step. We're going to give you sample logs. We're going to write that Datadog query. We're going to write the Splunk query for you. Don't even worry about it. And we'll show it to you, right? But we'll give you every single thing you need to make the decision that you need. You're right about the hallucination thing. So our models, everything we're doing is it's a very defined domain specific model, right? So we're not going to insert like grandma's cooking recipe in here. A model doesn't even know what that is, right? Like, right? We only do logs, metrics, and traces, right? And observability data. Like that's our domain. So it's a very targeted domain specific model. It helps,
doesn't it? Yeah. Just I wonder, as any company that deals with enterprises have to have SLAs for reliability and outages and things like that. In your space, when it comes to enterprise level usage of generative AI, have you found yourself having to provide SLAs on that as well? Is that something that people are having to do in the space of using in enterprise? We will guarantee that it will be inaccurate only percentage point of the time or something like that. Is that something you have to provide, or is no one really asking for that?
Yeah, so far what we've provided is just general software SLAs like uptime and being available. Because I think for us, right, like how do you measure 82%
Oh, for
accurate
sure.
versus 83%, right? I think for us, like the overwhelming response that we're getting from developers is, A, our RCAs are generally accurate, and B, when they're not, we've done most of the work for them, so we still save them time.
Yep. You point people in the right direction, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when things are hectic and there's a fire drill, we're telling you which room the fire's starting in, right? And when things are on fire, that's the thing you want to know the most, right?
And you can generally tell where the fire is once you've got near that room. So yes, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Although the rooms in this case may be very large and labyrinthian, but yes, still you're in the right room. I haven't really done a recent survey of a lot of not really your competitors, but the companies you're integrating with, shall we say. But I could imagine that a lot of them may be introducing or at least thinking about something similar. So how will you remain ahead of them?
Yeah, sure. So a couple thoughts there. So there are quite a few observability companies that are implementing OpenAI, for example, and in creating chat interfaces to make it easier to query, right? Like that's an established use case, and candidly, everyone would have that at some point, if not already. Our value prop is a bit different for most folks, right? I mean, our bet is that large enterprises will have several observability tools. In some cases, no observability tools at all, and just have observability in different sources in different places. And our thesis is that, if you're trying to debug applications in those environments or improve performance, someone's going to have to take a look at all that data really, really quickly. Whether those other tools have their own AI or it doesn't matter as much to us. It may make it easier for our models to query, candidly, but it doesn't matter to us. Our models, it doesn't like as long as data is spread out across multiple tools in a complicated environment, our value prop resonates.
Yeah, true. I think that's you're right there. That is probably the main selling point. But yeah, I can imagine everybody is racing to add similar things. And I honestly always forget which company it was because I spoke to a few at the same time. But I did meet a company many, many, many years ago who were doing something similar before it was called AI. And I can't entirely remember what happened to them. I'm not 100% sure if they're even still going, but maybe they were ahead of their time.
Well, you're hitting on something. So what we've learned with some of our customers is some folks have tried to build this on their own, right? I think, and that's why they call it the Holy Grail, because like, oh, this is the thing. It's like, it's not, we tried this, but it didn't work, right? Or there were a lot of promises as to what this technology can do, but the previous generation of vendors showed up and said, hey, we need clean annotated data. We need you to maintain these fixed data schemas. And by the way, like, we're going to need bodies in your organization that are like maintaining data for our models. I don't know, like that'll be frustrating to me, right? What we have now with generative AI, in particular, our generative AI, is that you don't have to do that anymore, right? Things can show up pre-trained, they can learn locally, right? These models can go anywhere, across any tool. It doesn't matter. You have complete flexibility. You have high quality performance and root cause analysis that's grounded in evidence, right? And you have all this operating with a very, very small footprint and making sure that the data remains in the boundaries of your enterprise. And not only that, but we can get the results to you anywhere. We can get the results to our web app, or we can integrate them into Slack. It doesn't matter, right? Like we will meet you exactly where you are. So we're bringing the best generative AI model, one of the only generative AI models for observability, like to your fingertips, as close as we possibly can in your enterprise.
I kind of like to ask you in as a final question, but with a little bit more nuance than how I normally ask it. You've just launched, effectively, publicly anyway. If we were to speak in 6 to 12 months, what are you planning? And the nuance I'm going to add is many times you've mentioned, we will meet you where you are, we will integrate, etc. So this, in theory, though, this also means there's so many things you could do and there's so many things you could integrate with and you can't do them all. So the nuance I want to ask is like, how will you decide more than any other kind of early stage SaaS company that is generally just doing what the prospective customers want, but so you don't just spend too much time always integrating with these one-off custom in-house solutions that's never going to benefit anybody else and just be a lot of time for your dev team. How will you finesse this roadmap in the future when you can really connect to and integrate with so many things?
Yeah. So for us, that comes down to the vision, which is largely informed by customer conversations, right? So, I would say in the past year, we had customers before we even came out. Like the announcement on November 8th was great, but like we were jamming with customers long before that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Very large ones, right? That are serious about tackling this problem. I would say over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to focus on probably three areas. So first is moving, and they're all customer driven. The first is moving into prediction. So we're already in infra, already in your environment. The models are incredibly smart. They're debugging incidents. Can they start to predict when some of these incidents are going to happen? The second thing is I mentioned very briefly that the models can take feedback, through our web app. The users can just basically say, hey, this RCA was great, or this part of this RCA was great. We're going to move into more robust private model tuning over the next 6 to 12 months. And last but not least, I view this more as a sign of trust. We've had certain customers that have said, hey, your RCAs are accurate. We like what we're seeing. Can you start issuing pull requests for us? Right. And to me, that starts to tell me that we're moving to a world where at least some of our customers should trust us with automating some of their incident resolution issues and opportunities. So that's where we're headed. I think you're right. Are we in a race to like have a million and one integrations? No, we'll just try to meet customers where they are, right? We'll continue to. But what I'm forecasting to you here is more so like where are our models going, right? And like in the next 6 to 12 months, when we sit down again, where will we be at that point? And those are the three things I will call out.
That predictive thing you said just very, very quickly. Do you mean in terms of an issue might get raised and Flip can kind of say, well, I've seen this before. I've seen this 100 times before. I think depending on the guardrails being put in place, I could confidently fix this for you. Is that what you mean? Or
yeah, I think we could eventually go there. To me, it all comes down to customer trust.
For sure.
And right. But yeah, we're moving towards that with some of our customers. At least the early beginnings of that type of thinking. And I view that as trust, right? That means that someone's valuing what we're doing. They trust our root cause analysis. It's grounded in evidence, right? And they're believing in us as a company and also like us as a partner and really helping them.
So I think from what you've described and what I can see on the website, this is not a platform that anyone listening can just go and play with. But do you have any like demo videos or anything like that where people can just get a vague idea of how things might look? Or
Yeah. So if you go to Flip.ai, we have a very light explainer that's up there. And I would say stay tuned. In the next couple of months, we'll definitely be putting more out there. I think the opportunity of coming out of stealth was great, but like we were really, really busy with customer stuff. So we really haven't had a chance to like really focus on our outward presence yet. So there'll be more coming in the next couple quarters. Cool.
Corey, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
And that was my interview with Corey from Flip.ai. I don't have too much to update you with at the moment. I have been in absolute final rush deadline mode for my forthcoming tech writing book with Pact Publishing. I have written all of the chapters and we're now in the final reviews of some of those chapters, and it has really taken up all of my time the past few weeks. I have a lot of nearly ready videos and things to go, but I just haven't been able to finish them on top of that, really. That has just taken up so much of my time. So there will be a lot more coming soon, but that's basically the main thing I've been working on. There will be definitely some more blog posts, some more videos, and some more podcast episodes from other podcasts, all announcing very soon. But I'm just going to keep it quiet for now until I think, A, they're all definitely done, and B, I can remember what I need to promote, because my brain is really quite fried at the moment from that book work. So yeah, it's been a little tough to keep up with everything, but I'm going to get back in to the rhythm of some of those soon. If you happen to be at KubeCon EU in 2 weeks from the release of this episode, say hello. I know quite a few of you will. I'm very interested to see any new demos you may have, or do some follow-up interviews if we've spoken before. So please do let me know, and I hopefully look forward to meeting some of you there. I have been Chris Chinchilla. You can always find more about me at chrischinchilla.com, which is where you can also find all of my contact details. And yes, I will be back to normality, whatever that may mean, soon. Thank you very much for joining me, and take care, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Find out more about me at chrischinchilla.com, where you can find show notes, sign up for my newsletter, and find all of my writing, games, work, and video links. There's also details on how to get in touch with me. And if you want to get even closer to what I do, join my Discord server for behind-the-scenes discussions and helping me